أنزلت فيه القرآن وافترضت على عبادك فيه الصيام صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة الأبدية على أعدائهم أجمعين. السلام عليكم أعزائنا المشاهدين. كيف فدك وصوت العترة عليهم السلام الفضائية. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم وتقبل الله أعمالكم ونرحب بكم في الليلة التاسعة من الليالي الرمضانية مع الشيخ. نرحب بكم ونرحب بالسادة الحضور في سلسلة الله كأن لم تعرفه من قبل. شكرا الكلمة
I seek refuge from Allah the Almighty against the evil devil. My saying in all matters is a saying of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. May all praise be to God Almighty, and may He send blessings upon His prophets, our Master Muhammad and his holy household. And may Allah curse their killers and enemies for eternity. We ended yesterday's live show with this hadith, which dates back to a very long time, which was narrated to us the three Muhammadun, which means Sheikh al-Kulaini and Sheikh al-Saduq and the Sheikh of the Ummah, Sheikh al-Tusi. May God's mercy be upon them. In the biggest hadith compilations, Rijal al-Kafi and Tahdhib al-Ahkam and so on. And his was narrated to us from Al-Fadl ibn Uqba, from Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that Ali alayhi salam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed down to Hud that you are one of the most pleasant worshippers. If it only wasn't for you to take some of the Muslims' money. He told him, I stayed up to do that for 40 mornings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed down, be lenient to my servant Dawood. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala became more lenient with him. So every single day he would make a new shield which he would sell for about 1,000 dirham. And after he sells those shields continuously, he would make more and more money until he eventually did not need to rely upon the Muslims' bank. The person who narrated this to us, which is our master Amir al-Mu'mineen, was one of the first people who truly practiced this hadith. We all know that our master Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was busy from conflict to conflict. And during the rulership of his temporary khilafah, the battles and the conflicts against him were continuous, such as the ones which occurred from Aisha and Muawiyah, and the Khawarij, who waged a 3-year war with him. So they did not leave him to rest. Peace be upon him. And add to that as well the responsibilities of managing a country and managing the teams. So he's in constant work, in constant burden. But although of all of this, we can read in Ibn Hilli's book where صاحب البحار أعلام المجلسي narrates that has been narrated from Amir al-Mu'mineen that he said when he used to finish from doing jihad, he used to go and teach people and to judge between them. And even when he finished from that, he used to work personally to earn an income, despite him being a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he sits down to teach people, he sits down to judge between people, and even when he finishes from that, he goes and sits inside of his house where he works by hand. And even during this work, he is constantly mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our methodology. That doesn't matter how much burdens and conflicts occur upon us, we must not stop the production of needing to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's income. Notice this very interesting report. In his chain from Hisham, that Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam said, "O Hisham, if you see 2 lions have met, so do not the asking of income get in between that." Which means that if 2 lions get in between, if it was in your ability to ask for income, don't stop that. So we must not stop the production, farming. And this is to be the basis of the planned upbringing in this upcoming country I want to make. So it becomes that the person who lives in this country we know that there will be many enemies to this, because this is a ceremony which is uplifting for many people and also ruins a lot of other ambitions which other people seem to have. And the opposing side, which is against the making of this country, would start wars and start conflicts because they're not happy with this achievement. The problem, my brothers, that we face as of now that in the times of grief and the times of uncertainty, there is a lot of doubt with our working hands because this condition overglooms him. Up to the position where the person who decides to serve Imam al-Mahdi is like a robot, emotionless, and doesn't care about anything. Whatever he sees, whatever he learns, as if he has no other purpose and continues working. So essentially a brainwashed machine which serves this purpose. If it was in the religious field, so be it. If it was in the engineering, handcrafting field, so be it. And in all possible realms of income of this country. This is what I believe to be the methodology of the Ahl-Bayt alayhim salam. Without this new country, there won't be an opportunity to give the young ones to be masters of production. And there's also no guarantee that they cannot protect him from possible outside influence. Whatever you do in your parenthood and your upbringing to prevent your children from going astray, the chances of him going astray or her going astray are extremely high. If the people who he's engaging with and society is between are wrecked. Who is better in parenting, you or the prophets? Are you better at raising your children than Prophet Noah, for example? That there is no comparison in this. There is no doubt that Prophet Noah was the best of guardians, the best of upbringers, and did not have any shortcoming towards his son. But why did his son go astray and deviate? Because the community which he lived in was a community which was filled with deviants. So ultimately, this affected him. The home education he had was at its finest, but the society was not helping with this. So this society was able to influence this child despite the child being from a good family. And the same exact situation happens in our lives today. The state of deviance in the West today is huge. Even if you close the doors of your house to avoid deviance, you'd get it from social media. You'd get it from the Wi-Fi. Look at what families in these countries suffer from. The mothers and fathers come to us complaining to us about what happened to their children, which breaks out our hearts. Someone might say, this is because of their shortcoming. In my opinion, they do not have any shortcoming, and they have tried their absolute best to protect their children. But they still deviated and adapted to the West. Why? These families tried their hardest. These families spent all of their money on Islamic schools, which also failed. These schools might have some shortcomings. They might be not overly religious, but they still failed. Some schools are generally strict. Because even the school, no matter how hard it tries, because it's in a community, in the countries where deviance is full, it will not succeed. Let's say it succeeds in raising a few students. One of those students leaves the school and engaged with humans, gets influenced, and brings this deviance into the school. Because eventually relations start to form between the children. This deviance spreads from the outside of the West to the inside of the school. So the school becomes like cancer. And you cannot feel this cancer in the beginning until it is far, far too late. They have completely adapted Western ideologies. What does it mean if you make What does it mean if you make a school in London and you call it Islamic, and it is truly Islamic, but all around your school there is deviance, there is Western propaganda. In this street that they are walking in, he finds nudity, he finds drugs, he finds LGBTQ morals, diseases, and Western ideas, which eventually transmits to the outside world. When he goes to the garden, when he goes to the gym, wherever he goes, he is at risk. And some believers told us before that is it not more of a priority, instead of making a country, why not make a school in London? And this school will be closer to families, there will be more students. I disagree with this. This is a dumb way of thinking. We have tried our best to combine this idea, but after thorough research, I have discovered that it is not possible. Go ask these Islamic schools about the amount of deviance that they have, which nowadays are not any different from regular government schools. These schools would not make you soldiers. They will get influenced. Society is drowned in this, and these children would also get drowned. There's like someone trying to purify a drop of blood in a bath of blood. It is impossible. So what we need to do is to make our own society where the young ones live in a country where all they do is just love the Ahlul, peace be upon them, and they teach the young ones from the start at maturity and seriousness, and never silly or immaturity. There will be a school in this country on our methodology and gear them up so that when they educate themselves, they might possibly engage with the outside civilizations. But sending your child to an Islamic school in this country is wrong. Don't be surprised when it comes out to you as a Western person. This society is sick. Even the Westerners themselves seem to agree with this in their own studies. There is a German American, Karen Horney, a psychologist, who died more than 70 years ago. In her psychology book, Guiding Humans, that the American individual is forced to accept a mental illness because he finds himself in the middle of a force. So, for example, society wants him to be a good, loving human to his fellow humans, but also, in another way, to think in a selfish way. Society invites him for cooperation and teamwork, but also influence him in harsh competition. Society wants him to become open-minded, but they don't allow him to be realistic and open-minded with fake propaganda. Society also wants him to be self-sufficient, but he's unable to. The American society قد فقدت. They have lost their pureness. They have lost their charisma. And it becomes more apparent that American families and European families are slowly being torn apart, which eventually leads you to mental illness. And look at this creative mission that she's about to say right now. We can deem these societies, the European and mainly the Western societies, that they are sick. There's not a Muslim saying this. This is a German woman who's a psychologist who said this over 80 years ago. So what do you think she would say if she saw imagine what she would say if she saw what happens today, where right now we have complete garbage. You know, up to what point Western societies have reached to sickness? Especially with this technological revolution. This has made teenagers live in a fake reality with an addiction to social media, which eventually leads them to crime. A couple of days ago, there was reports who was obsessed with gaining views. He was obsessed with these views. So he opened himself a channel and was obsessed on how to get more views. You must try something which has never been done before to eventually get some attraction. So he started 1, 2, 3, 4, up until he pretended that he would sell them the car, and he would put them in the car, and he would drive reckless, and they would get heart attacks. And then eventually, he thought about killing people live. And the first victim was his friend. Whilst he was laughing. After killing his friend, he went to his mother's house and killed both of his mother and father whilst he was laughing. Can you see how sick they are? Because of social media. And even the Muslims and the Shia are also falling into this. This social media world has made people go crazy, most especially the young ones, whose entire purpose became, how can I get more views? Some of them put on a fake turban. All of them trying to find some sort of new idea. So, what does it mean for us when these people go on these social medias, who people watch, thinking that they are actually giving them some purpose, some knowledge, when in reality that's not true. They don't have an idea of what is success, which eventually leads them to committing bad acts. Trying to get as much views as possible. This is an illness. This woman psychologist admits, from a psychological perspective, that society, specifically Western society, notably 80 years ago, was sick. It was wrong. Imagine what she would think if she saw today's societies. And imagine our Muslim societies,
أو في بلاد المسلمين ليسوا من حيث السوء ومقداره
and let's assume for the sake of arguments
فلنفرض ذلك
that they're not as bad as
ولكن لا أقل هذا
people in Western society,
أن مجتمعات
but
في الأوسط
our societies in the Middle East
للمجتمعات الغربية قبل 50 60 70 80 سنة صحيح
are
على
in
الأقل
the same
هذا على
way
تقدير فإذا
similar
المجتمعات بحسب الدراسات
to
فريضة
the Western societies 80 years ago.
شبابنا في بلادنا شلون يقلدون هؤلاء
Look at our youth in our countries copying the trends of the West, clothing, behaviors, the same behavior, the same appearance, the same way of talk,
التقليعات الغربية هذه ونفس التمايل والرقص والمسخرة والتفاهة
and the same unseriousness.
فإذا صار العالم كله مع الأسف الشديد
So the whole world has been drowned in deviance.
فأنت كيف يمكنك أن تواجه ذلك
So how can you
أن تكون
combat this
من الأرض على الأقل
without making
بقعة صغيرة كانت أم كبيرة على الأقل يكون فيها الحد الأدنى من النظافة
a certain spot in the world where we can perceive
حتى لا يتلوث
an amount of people
تحاول تنشئ
who will be safe from this, who we can protect
في هذا المنبت النقي
from the Western ideologies.
ضائع والأموال مهدورة يعني ليس من الحكمة أن آتي وأشتري مبنى في لندن
It is not
سيكلف ملايين ما راح يكون بسيط حتى تنشئ مدرسة
wise
بالمناسبة
for me to buy a building in London
وتجيب كادر تدريسي
and to bring teachers
وتتعب وتجيب آلاف
and to try and bring thousands of students
النهائية
that in the end,
الصالحة لا تتجاوز نصف من 1%.
you discover after all of these thousands of students, there's only 2 or 3 which have actually turned out to be successful
سليمة أولا
and become soldiers.
درجات النجاح تكون معدلاتها
We need to make sure that our success rate is high.
لماذا العالم ضاع إلى هذا الحد؟
Why did the world end up to this place?
كل ذلك بسبب الإغراق في المادية
All of this is because
ما يتجاوز حدود الفطرة
the obsession
ذلك بسبب الإعراض عن تعاليم الله تبارك وتعالى
of going against God's desires and God's instructions.
مع هذا الحديث القدسي الشريف
Hence why it would be a good idea for me to recite this hadith to you,
الذي أورده الصدوق عليه الرحمة في أماليه
which As-Saduq rahimahullah narrated in his Amari
أبيه عن آبائه عليهم السلام قال
from the Imams alayhim salam
قال رسول الله صلى
that the
الله
Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa said,
قال الله جل جلاله
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said,
يا ابن آدم
O sons of Adam,
فيما أمرتك
obey me in what I have
ما يصلحك
instructed you, and don't teach me in what fixes you.
تعاليم الله كأنها أذكى من الله عياذا بالله تعرف مصلحتها أكثر من الله
This is the issue of people.
الله يقول
They don't want to follow Allah's instructions.
ما أمرتك ولا تعلمني ما يصلحك امشي على ما أقول ترى الخير والفلاح
They think that they are more capable of knowing what's best for them than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
جعل
which is not the case.
باقي المرء على نفسه
For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put limitations on someone wanting to spend money on himself,
أمر مذموم
or
عندك شوية
for the amount of money,
لا تصرف زايد على نفسك ولا تعود نفسك وعيالك هذه الحالة.
that you should not be extravagant
إذا عودت نفسك
when spending money on yourself.
العادة ستأسرك المادية ومن ثم تأخذك الدنيا إلى مآخذها وتبتعد.
When you get used to this,
في وصية مولانا الباقري لابنه الصالح
when you and your sons get used to this, you'll soon depend on that. From Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, in his will,
حسين ابنه جعفر بن
he told
فقال
his companion
يا بني اصبر
and his son,
ولا تعد
wait for the calamities
تعطي نفسك ما ضر
and don't
أكثر من
give yourself
لغيرك. لا تعطي
too much
الذي ضره عليك أكثر من النفع.
and do not give yourself something which has some benefits
هذه الاستهلاكيات بتروح
and
تبتاع
little benefits.
هذه المنتجات الاستهلاكية على تنوعها
For example,
وكثير
you buy yourself
بلا حاجة.
a certain
رفه نفسك أكثر.
product
إذا درست المسألة
in order to, feel good about yourself.
لوجدت أن ضرر
But if you look at yourself
التي أغرقت نفسك فيها أكثر من نفعها.
that these products,
نفعها في الحقيقة صار لغيرك للذي أنتج وللذي اتجر وللذي باعك.
they don't really help you that much in your life. Rather, they help the people who are selling them.
هذا مقدارا وأنت تضررت أكثر. قد يتصور هذا أيضا
This must also be applied, for example,
أو جماعة أو تحت لواء
if you entered
قائد من هؤلاء القادة السياسيين والحزبيين أو
under one of those other political leaders,
حتى المتمرجعين أحيانا.
all people claim to be
كل شيء اعتقادا
grand scholars.
بين أنك إذا
So you give up everything
تكتشف
to believe in him.
ما أخذت بمقدار ما أخذ
But then you discover
هو الذي
that you have not gained
أو انتفع
as much as he has gained.
الذي تضررت بلا ضرر. إذن يجب أن تعود نفسك على أن لا تعطي نفسك شيئا ضره
Hence why
من نفع.
you need to get used to not giving yourself
يا ابنك
too much
مدلل زايد
in which you gain little and lose a lot.
ما طلب شيئا وفرته.
Whenever he asks for something, your child, for example,
وفسحاء
toys,
وسفرات ولهو لعب
trips,
اطلب وتمنى.
entertainment,
هذا راح ينشأ الطفل
he instantly gets it.
نشأة
This child
طبيعية.
would grow up in an out of ordinary
يكون بعدئذ
state.
لا يملأ عينه شيء.
There will be nothing
رضا. مشكلة بعض
which
الأبناء
fills his eyes,
في تعاملهم مع الأبناء هي هذه
which is the fact that they
أنهم
will not appreciate whatever you do in the future.
التدبير.
Their good hearts, the parents,
خلي نقول برهم بأبنائهم
because most of them are good-willed,
هذا الخطأ.
they make this big mistake
يدلل
of giving away too much to their sons and to their daughters.
شوية مودي مدينة الملاهي.
Every now and then he takes them to the theme park.
زين مدينة الملاهي هذه شنو فيها؟ سؤال.
For example, the theme park,
ألوان من الفساد.
which has
المناظر.
countless forms of
الاختلاط بالناس الكفرة والفجرة والفسقة.
haram.
ما أدري الموسيقى
It has music.
ومو بس هاي يعني انتبهوا.
And not only this,
الطفل حينئذ يترجم مفهوم
when
السعادة بهذا.
the child
يعني هذا الشيء
understands
يلذ به ويسعد.
that the theme park is what he enjoys and that's what happiness comes from,
من أبناء العوائل غير المتدينة أو غير المسلمة
and he looks to other families
إليهم يضحكون
who are
وكذا يفهم أن
not
هؤلاء يعيشون
on good
السعادة
methodology,
ويصبحون هم مثله الأعلى.
and he assumes that they are happy in their life.
معاه ويكبر تكبر هالمفاهيم عنده في ذهنه.
So when he grows older, he assumes
شنو هالجنون؟
that this is happiness.
تقول لا مو انا اريد اونس الطفل، ونس الطفل، اكو مليون طريقه اخرى بعيده عن هذه الطرق.
You tell me I want to entertain my child. I'll tell you there's 1,000 ways to entertain your child,
يكون خطرا على الطفل.
but not in these ways which pose harm to the child.
قال الباقر عليه السلام: إن شر الآباء، شوف، من دعا
Imam al-Baqir said,
إلى
the worst of parents is the father whose kindness led him
هذا ابني وأدلله
to over pleasuring his children.
أودي ما أدري الملاهي، أسفر كل شوية، أطلع كل شوية، ألعب كل شوية، شنو يطلب من الألعاب المختلفة كل شوية أروح أجيب له. أنت ما تدري هذا ليس برا.
You assume
قد تجاوز
that
المطلوب
this
شرعاً وعقلانياً
happiness
وحكمة. أنت
that you give your child,
هذا من شر الآباء.
you are becoming one of the first worst fathers.
ماكو واحد اتبع هذه السياسة في التربية مع أبنائه.
There is not a person who tried this methodology
أو مرضى
with this children of his,
أنه لا يملأ عينه شيء، لا يستمتع
which
بشيء في الحياة لأنه مجرب كل شيء.
until of which they fail,
هي الطاغية.
because they have had everything.
دراسات كما تعلمون أكثر معدلات الانتحار
The highest suicide rates
الغنية والمرتاحة، يعني الناس اللي دخلوا
are for the families which are
أبناء المليارديرية والمليونيرية
living lavish.
ينتحرون. هذا مو عجيب؟ لا مو عجيب، لأنه هذا من الصغر ماكو شيء
Because from their childhood,
ممنوع عليه، كل شيء مجرب، فما يستمتع بشيء.
everything was provided for him. There's nothing to be excited for anymore.
كله بسبب
That is all your fault.
هكذا وجهك الله.
This is not how Allah directed you.
أطعني فيما أمرتك
He says, the hadith,
وما يصلح
O the son of Adam,
الله تعالى
obey me in what I have instructed you,
بأبنائك صحيح، بس لا
and do not assume
ولا
that you know what's better for you than me.
أمام ما تعارف عليه المجتمع. يعني المجتمع صار متعارفا عنده، لازم تجيب لابنك جهاز يلعب
For example, in society today,
خلي متعته بأشياء أخرى مفيدة.
they assume that
اكو العاب صحيح، العاب يدويه ومعينه كذا اللي تنمي عقل الطفل. ما تحتاج تروح
do not give a child a PlayStation
بلاي ستيشن وعالم الالعاب الالكترونيه وعالم الانترنت اللي 24 ساعه متسمر امام هذا الجهاز الى ان يتعقد
which causes him to get an addiction from social media and video games and violence and all of this.
بفقدان المشاعر الانسانيه، لانه حسب الدراسات
He lacks
هؤلاء الاطفال
human
أميكين
desires.
التعامل مع الأجهزة، ويقل التلامس ما بينهم وما بين البشر من أهلهم من أقرانهم. هذا شيئا فشيئا يتحول إلى آلة مجردة من المشاعر.
Eventually,
حادثة قبل
when he
سنوات
gets
نشرت
too
قصة
deep in
هنا
those video
عن
games,
طفل قتل أخاه الطفل
up until a
وما
point
يرغبان بهذه الأجهزة،
where
لأنه
I've
هذه
seen a
الأجهزة
report
كلها مشاهد عنف وقتل وضرب
where a baby,
وكذا.
not a baby, but a toddler,
مع أخيه
killed his
زي
fellow toddler
هذا الذي يشاهده
who were playing a PlayStation violence game, who ended up killing the other brother
وذبح أخاه.
with a knife.
صغار كانوا سنوات معدودة، هكذا فعل وما يشعر بالذي فعله هو.
As a result of this game.
الآباء الأمهات يريدون فقط أن يرتاحوا من حنة الولد، مثل ما يقولون روح سلمه جهاز وخليه بس يلعب ويلتهي، وهذا صحيح.
Parents want to avoid
أين الحكمة في ذلك؟
the burden
أنت عليك في
of watching out for the children,
سعيك أن
so they give the children advice in order to leave them.
وتقتصد كذلك.
So let children play games which are supported
إخواني هذا قانون
by us, and do not spend too much money on yourself.
عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام قال
From Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam, in another hadith, he says,
لما أقام العالم الجدار
when
عالم من؟ الخضر عليه السلام أقام الجدار في القصة
when Al-Khidr
عليه السلام.
put up the wall,
لما أقام العالم الجدار أوحى الله تبارك وتعالى
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed down to Musa the following,
جازي
that
الأبناء
I
بسعي الآباء إن
give
خيراً
the children
وإن
benefits of their fathers.
هذا القانون عند الله عز وجل.
This is the law for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want the children to feel
لا سمح
and to be good,
يرون الشر
if you don't
لسعيك من قبل
pursue good,
اضبط سلوكيات
they will become evil.
برك بأبنائك لا يكون بأن تفرط فيه إلى حد إمراضهم برك
Your
بأبنائك
children
أن تكون حكيما
being happy
وتسعى في الخير
does not require you to buy endless toys.
أن ابنك سيشقى إذا ما جعلته من الصغر بعيدا عن هذه الملوثات
Do not assume
التي
that your children
تلهيه
would
والتي جاءتنا
turn out to be good
لا
if you give them video games and you give them access to the internet and you
تتذكرون أنتم
let them mix with society.
صغارا أن حياتكم كانت أسعد من حياتها على الوسائل البسيطة التي كنا نلعب فيها ونحن صغار والجيل اللي قبلنا كان أسعد وأسعد بعد اللي قبلنا وهكذا
And
ليش؟ لأن الحياة
you'll notice that in your younger years,
التي تلامس
you're happier
ولا تعدو عنها هي الحياة التي
than the games that you see today.
الله عز وجل وهي التي توصل الإنسان إلى السعادة وليس
You'd find that they are the
الإنسان بفرط
things which truly resonate with your true nature.
يعقد الحياة بظن أن هذه التعقيدات هي عبارة عن تنوع جديد في وسائل الترفيه
People who pursue this kind of methodology when raising their children
ولكنه يكتشف
would ultimately discover after all this time,
كل هذه التجارب أنه ما
after all of this
أبدا ما
years, that he has not gained happiness and his children have deviated.
ربيه على الإيمان والتقى في أجواء صالحة وتزرع فيه بذرة مهمة جدا هي بذرة أن
You, from the start
تمهيد لإيمان
of a child's journey, you put in that seed in him,
الليل نهار
which is the fact that he has to know that everything he should think about, everything he should do in his life
داني بهذا الإمام
should be related
ليلا ونهارا
to Imam al-Mahdi.
البر الصحيح بالأبي
He is simply born for a message. This is the true way to raise children.
يحهم
This is what they will need,
سعداء
which will hopefully make them happy
ناجحين في كل مجال
and successful.
في المجال الديني حتى في المجالات لأنه غير عاد عن الفطرة هو ماشي مع الفطرة أتعلمون ما أفضل الأعمال عند الله
Do you know what's the best way
محاسن عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام
of worship to Allah?
موسى بن عمران عليه السلام يا
Hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where
مالي
Musa
عندك
asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
فقال حب الأطفال
Allah said, loving children is one of the best forms of worship
توحيدي
because I have created them upon my worship.
أدخلتهم برحمتي جنة
If I make them die,
واجبك إذن أن تحرص على
I make them enter my Jannah. So you must protect that true nature of children.
حب الأطفال
Loving your children is the best forms of worship, because Allah says, I have made them the children in the true nature of Tawheed. You must protect them, and you must return them back to their original nature. This is how parenting should be done. Ali alayhi salam says, the best of what fathers inherit to their children is manners. People think that insurance is the best thing to give your children, which is not. It is manners. This is what we pursue in our new country. Who have been telling us to save their children. So we must provide them with a separate country where we can purify the society. There is no danger in the worry of your children deviating. Everything will be under control. And everything would be with advancements and production. He must invent. He must not only be playing. Some families who are very poor in Africa and alike, they tell you from the studies that they are living as a much happier family than Western families with high income, who have technology and assets and everything they could possibly need. One of the reasons for this is because children from that age, they are filled with creativity. Even when the child is 3 years old, the child is still working on creativity by cracking open peanuts, and so on and so forth. Therefore, this child grows up to becomes a production artist. But then go to the European teenager. You find that his mind is still a child. He says that I play video games. His father is king, his family are kings. This is how he's become. The amount of wars he caused in Yemen, the amount of problems he caused worldwide are huge. He did not live
مصيبة شوف أنه مو
in a healthy way.
يمكن مصيبته تقع على نفسه على مثلا
Because with this
تقع على
person,
لا إله إلا الله بأسره. شوف المصيبة التي نحن فيها.
his problems will not only stop at his own self, but they will expand to the whole Islamic Ummah.
يعينونا في تأسيس هذا الوطن الجديد
You must aid us and support us for the future of your children.
أحسنتم سماحة الشيخ الحبيب على هذه الكلمة القيمة، ونسأل الله العلي القدير أن يرينا هذا المشروع في أقرب وقت ممكن إن شاء الله تعالى. إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا، هذا المشروع الذي إن شاء الله تعالى يمهد لظهور صاحب العصر والزمان.
Inshallah, we wish for this project to be happening as soon as possible. Thank you all very much for watching. We will see you tomorrow, inshallah, at the same time. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good night.
أعرضنا عنها بسبب أنها كانت قد فاتت، هي بين العشاءين، ما فايدة بعدها. يصير قضاء، كل المستحبات يحسن قضاء.